The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over Maria's cherished garden. This was her realm of solace, where vibrant tulips nodded their heads in the gentle breeze and the scent of jasmine hung thick in the air. She moved methodically from plant to plant, her fingers tenderly plucking away the unwelcome weeds, her mind as clear as the cloudless sky above. Her phone lay on the wrought iron table, a modern trespasser in this timeless sanctuary. Its sudden vibration against the metal was jarring, the screen lighting up with Alex's name. Maria wiped her brow, leaving a streak of earth across her forehead as she reached for the phone. "Maria, why haven't you sent this month's allowance to Mom? She's been calling me, worried sick." Alex's voice was a storm cloud in her sunny day. Maria's hand stilled, the phone almost slipping from her grasp. "But I did, Alex. I sent it the same day we always do. The 5th of every month." Her voice was a calm river flowing against his torrent of confusion. "There must be a mistake. Check her account," she suggested, the lines of concern etching her features. The line went dead, and Maria was left holding the phone to her ear, the dial tone a lonely echo. She stared at the device, feeling a sudden disconnect, as if the routine she had woven so carefully was beginning to unravel. Hours later, when the sky had donned its starry night cloak, Alex walked through the door. The crease between his brows was deep, his lips set in a thin line. Maria put down her knitting, the soft clink of the needles punctuating the silence. "What is it, Alex? What did you find?" He sank into the chair, his body language void of its usual vitality. "Maria, I saw the account," his voice was barely a whisper, "there's so much money in there. It's not just from us. There are deposits, large sums, from places unknown." She stood, her heart now a wild bird in a cage. "Deposits? From where?" He shook his head, lost. "I don't know. But they are substantial. We need to talk to Mom." Maria nodded, her mind racing. This was not a simple clerical error. This was something more, something that lay hidden, like the roots of her garden, beneath the surface of the life they knew. Together, in the quiet of their home, amidst the ticking of the clock and the soft hum of the refrigerator, they planned their approach. This was a matter that needed tending, and much like her garden, Maria knew it would take patience and care to unearth the truth. The night had wrapped the house in its quiet blanket when Alex finally came home, looking like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. The air was filled with the ticking of the grandfather clock, a rhythmic counterpoint to Alex's erratic heartbeat. He found Maria in the living room, the glow of the table lamp casting shadows that seemed to dance with her knitting needles. "Alex, you're home late," Maria said, her voice laced with concern as she noticed the absence of his usual greeting, a peck on her cheek and a playful jest about her old lady hobby. He collapsed into his armchair, the leather groaning under the burden of his unspoken troubles. "Maria, I saw the account," he began, the words stumbling out of him like wayward stones. "There's so much money in there. It's not just from us. There are deposits from unknown sources, large sums, far beyond what we've ever sent." Maria set her knitting aside, her hands now idle in her lap. "What do you mean? Are you sure you were looking at the right account?" Her brows knitted together tighter than the yarn in her hands. "Yes, I'm sure," Alex replied, running his hands through his hair. "There are transactions, big ones, every month, just days after our allowance goes in. It's been happening for almost a year now." The silence that followed was heavy, fraught with unspoken fears. Could someone be taking advantage of Elena? Maria finally broke the silence, her voice steady, but her hands betraying a slight tremor. "We need to talk to your mother, Alex. Tomorrow. We can't let this go on without understanding what's happening." Alex nodded, the pallor of his face reflecting his inner turmoil. "I know. I can't fathom it, Maria. Where could this money be coming from? And why?" They sat together, the room growing colder as the fire in the hearth died down to embers. The familiar comfort of their home felt alien now, as if the room were holding its breath, waiting for the dawn that would usher in their confrontation with the unknown. In the stillness, Maria reached across the expanse between them, her fingers finding Alex's hand. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together," she whispered, her voice a lifeline in the dark. Alex's grip tightened around hers, a silent thank you hanging in the space between them. They sat there, united in their resolve, as the clock ticked on, marking the passage of time towards an uncertain tomorrow. The next morning arrived with the sky painted in strokes of gray, as if to mirror the storm of uncertainty brewing in Maria's thoughts. She stood at the kitchen window, watching the early drizzle blur the world outside into a watercolor of doubt and apprehension. Alex shuffled in, his hair tousled from sleep, or perhaps from the restless tossing that had punctuated the night. "Coffee?" Maria asked, more out of habit than hope that it would wash away the unease. He nodded, silently taking the mug she offered and cradling it between his hands as though it could warm the chill that had settled inside him. "We'll go after breakfast," Maria said, her voice a forced march of determination. Alex looked up, his eyes searching hers. "What if it's something bad, Maria? What if she's in trouble or being scammed?" Maria turned from the window, her gaze steady. "Then we'll deal with it. We'll help her sort it out. We've faced challenges before, haven't we?" He took a deep breath, the steam from the coffee mingling with a sigh. "Yeah, we have. It's just, Mom's always been so careful with money. This doesn't make sense." They ate in silence, the clinking of cutlery on plates a mundane percussion to the cacophony of thoughts in their heads. Finally, with the breakfast dishes cleared away, they donned their coats and braced themselves against the weather. The drive to Elena's was a quiet journey, each lost in their own worries, the windshield wipers keeping time with their racing hearts. Upon arrival, they found Elena's cottage as charming as ever, its stone facade a bastion against the elements. But today, the roses climbing the trellis seemed less vibrant, the cheer of the garden dimmed by their concerns. Elena greeted them at the door, her smile as warm as the home she ushered them into. "Maria, Alex. What a surprise. To what do I owe the pleasure?" Maria exchanged a glance with Alex, who took a deep, steadying breath. "Mom, we need to talk to you about something important," he began, his voice betraying the gravity of their visit. Elena's brow furrowed with concern. Come in. Let's sit down. You're worrying me with those serious faces." They settled in the living room, the usual comfort of the plush sofas, now feeling stiff and formal. "Mom, it's about the allowance we send you," Maria started, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Alex checked your account yesterday, and we saw that there's more money there than what we've been sending. A lot more." Elena's expression was unreadable for a moment, then softened with understanding. "Ah, I see. You're worried about the extra deposits." "Yes," Alex interjected. "Where is it coming from, Mom? We need to know you're safe." Elena's eyes twinkled with a mix of mischief and pride. "Well, it seems I have some explaining to do." The room, once filled with the noise of their dread, fell silent, all ears now attuned to Elena's forthcoming revelation. The storm outside continued to rage, but inside, the first drops of clarity were about to fall, promising to clear the haze of the unknown. Elena led them to the sitting room, a place where countless family memories had been woven into the very fabric of the soft furnishings. Now, it was to be the stage for a revelation that none could have anticipated. The logs in the fireplace crackled, a contrast to the somber mood that had settled over Maria and Alex. Elena perched at the edge of her favorite armchair, her hands folded in her lap, a Mona Lisa smile playing on her lips. "I suppose my little secret has finally come to light," she said, her voice a mixture of amusement and pride. Maria leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. "Elena, what secret?" Alex, his concern etched clearly across his brow, added, "Mom, you know you can tell us anything. We're here for you." Elena's eyes danced with the vitality of a woman half her age. "After your father passed, life became quiet. Too quiet. I needed something, a purpose. So, I ventured online and stumbled upon a group of spirited individuals who were in the twilight of their careers, just like me. She paused, her gaze flickering to the flames as if they were kindling for the story she was about to unfold. "And?" Maria urged gently, sensing there was more to the tale. "And," Elena continued, "we shared stories, experiences. I found out that there are young people out there, entrepreneurs, who are in dire need of the wisdom we've accumulated over the years." Maria and Alex shared a confused look. "But how does that explain the money?" Maria asked. Elena's smile widened. "Well, I began to mentor these young minds. I shared my knowledge from years of running the bookstore. Marketing, customer service, inventory management, you name it. But mentoring is one thing. Where does the money come in?" Alex pressed, his financial instincts kicking in. "Patience, my boy," Elena chided playfully. "As it turns out, some of these startups have become quite successful. And they were grateful. They insisted on sharing a bit of their success with me." Maria sat back, her mind reeling. "You mean to say they've been paying you?" "Not just paying," Elena corrected with a chuckle. "They call it investing in wisdom. And before you worry, I've checked every company with the Better Business Bureau, and all the transactions are legitimate." Alex, usually the skeptic, could only shake his head in wonder. "I can't believe it. You've been doing all this, and we had no idea." Elena reached out, taking their hands in hers. "I've always believed that age is just a number. It doesn't define what you can contribute to the world. And this," she gestured to the statements on the coffee table, "is my contribution." The room was warm, not just from the fire, but from the glow of respect and admiration that now filled it. Maria and Alex looked at Elena not just as a mother and mother-in-law, but as a woman who had single-handedly carved a new path in the autumn of her life, a path paved with the wisdom of years. As the revelation hung in the air, Maria watched the interplay of emotions across Alex's face: shock, disbelief, and then, slowly, admiration. The room, warmed by the fire's glow, seemed to cocoon them in a world far removed from the storm that raged outside. "So, you've been guiding these young people, shaping their futures?" Maria asked, her voice tinged with awe. "And they've been rewarding you for it?" "That's right," Elena said, her eyes sparkling with a youthful mischief that belied her years. "It started as a hobby, something to fill the days. But then, I realized I had so much to give, and they had so much to learn." Alex leaned in, his earlier frustration replaced by fascination. "And you've been doing all this from here?" "From your laptop?" He gestured to the sleek computer on the side table. Elena nodded, a laugh escaping her lips. "Yes, from that little machine there. It's amazing what you can do with the technology these days." Maria's mind raced, images of Elena, once just the kind family matriarch, now a secret powerhouse of wisdom, guiding fledgling businesses to success. "And the money, Elena, you've been saving it for the grandchildren?" Elena's face softened, her voice lowering to a tender timbre. "I wanted to ensure their future, to give them the start in life that everyone deserves. And I couldn't think of a better use for this unexpected blessing. But to keep it a secret?" Alex chided gently, a smile tugging at his lips. Elena shrugged, her demeanor casual, but her eyes twinkling with intent. "I wanted it to be a surprise. Besides, a little mystery in life keeps things interesting, don't you think?" Maria and Alex exchanged a look, a silent communication that spoke of the newfound depth they'd discovered in Elena. "We had no idea," Maria repeated, her voice a mix of wonder and a hint of reprimand for their ignorance. Elena reached for Maria's hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "We all have our gardens to tend, Maria. Mine just happens to be digital." The metaphor struck a chord with Maria, a gardener herself, and she smiled. "You've planted quite the garden, Elena. And it seems to be in full bloom." They laughed together, the sound mingling with the crackling of the logs in the fireplace. The storm outside had begun to wane, the thunder a distant grumble, as if in deference to the power of the storm within Elena that had now been shared. As the laughter died down, a comfortable silence settled. It was the silence of seeds of understanding taking root, of respect growing like a sturdy oak, and of admiration blossoming like the most exquisite rose in Maria's garden. The storm had passed, and in its wake, it left a family more tightly knit by the threads of an unexpected tapestry of entrepreneurship and legacy. After the revelations and shared laughter had faded into a comfortable silence, Maria, Alex, and Elena sat together, sipping the last of their tea. The fire had burned down to a warm glow, mirroring the sense of contentment that filled the room. Elena's story had not just unveiled a hidden aspect of her life, but had also cast a new light on the very essence of what it meant to be proactive at any age. Maria broke the silence, her voice reflective. "Elena, you've always been full of surprises, but this is something else. You're not just an architect of fortune, you're an inspiration." Elena's cheeks flushed with modest pride. "Well, dear, life didn't come with instructions. When your father passed, I realized I could either sit in the shadows or become the light. I chose the latter." Alex, who had been listening intently, leaned forward. "Mom, I've always known you to be strong, but you've taken it to a whole new level. You've built something incredible here." Elena patted his hand, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of joy and wisdom. "Alex, my love, we're all capable of more than we think. Remember that in the business you're building. It's not just about the product, it's about the heart you put into it." Maria nodded, her mind already weaving the threads of this new knowledge into the fabric of her thoughts. "You're saving for the grandkids' education with this, it's the most beautiful gift." Elena smiled, a soft chuckle escaping her. "It's more than money for education. It's a lesson in seizing life, in making a difference. I want them to know their grandmother as someone who contributed, who stayed relevant and didn't let age define her capabilities." Alex stood, a renewed energy in his posture. "You've given us a lot to think about, Mom. It's more than just surprising, it's a paradigm shift." Maria rose to join him, her heart full. "Elena, you've always managed to nurture everyone around you. Now we see you've been nurturing a whole community of young minds as well." Elena stood, the three of them forming a small circle of unity. "We all have our gardens, don't we? Some are tangible, with blooms and leaves, and some are made of dreams and aspirations. The important thing is to keep tending to them, always." They shared a group hug, a symbol of family, support, and the boundless love that tied them together. As they stepped back, Maria's gaze fell upon the photo of Elena and her late husband, smiling from the mantelpiece. "You know," Maria said thoughtfully, "he would have been so proud of you." Elena followed her gaze, her eyes softening with memory. "I like to think he's been guiding me along the way." The sentiment hung in the air, a sweet note in the symphony of their lives. They left Elena's house that day not just with a story to tell, but with hearts full of admiration for the matriarch who had shown them the beauty of reinvention. The drive back was quiet, but it was a quiet filled with contemplation and possibility. As they pulled into their driveway, the last of the storm clouds clearing from the sky, Maria turned to Alex, a determined glint in her eye. "Alex, let's take a page out of your mother's book. Let's start building not just a future, but a legacy." Alex smiled, the pride and love for his mother and wife clear in his eyes. "Let's do it. The architect of fortune has laid the foundation for us." And in that moment, they both understood that fortune was not just in wealth but in the courage to create, to mentor, and to leave a mark on the world, a legacy that would transcend time and age. The evening had started like any other in our quiet suburb, with the gentle hum of daily life fading into the peaceful silence of night. I was carrying over a homemade lasagna to Mrs. Thompson, hoping to brighten the widow's solitary evening, when her frantic wave from the porch caught my attention. The urgency in her gesture was out of character for the usually reserved woman, sparking a flicker of concern as I approached her door. The moment my foot crossed her threshold, Mrs. Thompson's hand clasped around my arm with a surprising strength. Her eyes, wide and filled with an imploring urgency, bore into mine. "You need to see this," she whispered, her voice a mixture of fear and determination. There was no room for questions. Her grip on my arm, firm and insistent, guided me into the dimly lit living room. The warmth of the lasagna dish contrasted sharply against the chill that started to settle in my heart. Without wasting a moment, Mrs. Thompson directed me to an old armchair facing the television. "Please, sit," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I obeyed, the confusion and unease within me growing with each passing second. She turned on the television, the screen flickering to life to reveal a paused image that sent my heart into a stutter. It was Mark, my husband, looking back at me from the screen, his image captured in a moment that felt both intimate and alien. "Watch," Mrs. Thompson urged, her finger trembling as she pressed play. The video resumed, displaying a scene that seemed to unfold in slow motion. Mark was sitting in a cozy cafe, not the kind of setting one would associate with his usual business meetings. His demeanor was different, relaxed in a way that I rarely saw during his moments of unwinding at home. The woman sitting across from him was laughing, her hand reaching out to touch his arm in a gesture that felt painfully intimate. As the scene played out, a tightness formed in my chest, a mix of betrayal and disbelief. How could the man I shared my life with, the man I trusted more than anyone else, be the same person in this video? Mrs. Thompson paused the video, turning to face me. Her expression was somber, her eyes reflecting a deep sorrow. "I didn't mean to pry," she began, her voice quivering. "But that's my niece, and she believes Mark is her fiancé." The room seemed to spin as her words sank in. My mind raced, trying to piece together this impossible puzzle. "But, how? Why?" I stammered, my voice barely recognizable to my own ears. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I had to tell you. I thought it was a mistake at first, but then I saw them together, heard him call her by that pet name, the one you mentioned once." The reality of the situation hit me like a tidal wave, leaving me gasping for air in its wake. The man I believed I knew, the life we built together, all of it was now under question. "Why, Mark? Why would you do this to us?" I whispered to the empty room, the question hanging unanswered in the air. Mrs. Thompson moved to sit beside me, her presence a small comfort in the storm of emotions. "People hide their true selves sometimes, dear," she said softly, her hand finding mine, offering a solace that seemed so out of reach. "But the truth always finds its way out, one way or another." The revelation that night changed everything. What I thought would be a simple act of neighborly kindness had unraveled into a moment that would alter the course of my life. The truth about Mark, once veiled in the normalcy of our daily lives, was now laid bare, setting the stage for a confrontation that promised to be as painful as it was necessary. As I sat there, the cold lasagna forgotten, a plan began to take shape, a plan born of desperation and the need for answers. Mrs. Thompson, the neighbor I barely knew, had become my unexpected ally in the face of an unimaginable betrayal. Together, we would confront Mark, and together, we would face whatever came next. In the aftermath of the revelation, the room felt suffused with a heavy silence, as if the very air had thickened with the weight of the truth. The image of Mark, so carefree and intimate with another woman, replayed in my mind, a haunting loop that seemed to erode the foundation of our marriage with each pass. "I can't just let this go," I said, the words feeling both hollow and heavy in the dim light of Mrs. Thompson's living room. "I need to understand why." Mrs. Thompson, who had been watching me with a mix of sympathy and resolve, nodded. "And you shall. We'll confront him together," she declared, her voice stronger now, laced with a determination that belied her frail appearance. "He owes you that much." "But how?" "He'll just deny everything if I confront him alone," I countered, my mind racing through scenarios, each ending in more confusion and pain. "We'll catch him off guard. Invite him here, under a different pretense. He won't expect it, and he won't be able to prepare his lies," Mrs. Thompson suggested, her eyes gleaming with a strategic sharpness. I considered her words, the gears in my mind turning. "But why would he come here? To your house?" I asked, trying to piece together the logistics of such a confrontation. Mrs. Thompson smiled, a wry twist of her lips. "Let's just say, I'll make him an offer he can't refuse. Tea, perhaps?" Men like him always underestimate the elderly. He'll think it's just a harmless invitation from a lonely old lady. The idea seemed both absurd and brilliant. Mark, with his carefully curated image of respectability, would never suspect a confrontation in the guise of a simple afternoon tea. But what will we say? How do we even begin to address this? The enormity of the situation began to settle in, the initial shock giving way to a daunting realization of the confrontation ahead. We start with the truth. We show him the evidence and watch him react. There's no rehearsal for a moment like this, dear. We'll have to trust our instincts, Mrs. Thompson advised, her hand reaching out to squeeze mine, a gesture of solidarity in our shared uncertainty. And if he denies it? I asked, the fear of that possibility a cold knot in my stomach. Then we press on. The truth has a way of breaking through even the most practiced lies. Besides, we'll have each other. You won't be facing him alone, she assured me, her conviction lending me a semblance of strength. The plan, as unconventional as it was, offered a path forward, a way to confront the betrayal that had upended my life. The thought of facing Mark, of demanding answers, was terrifying, yet the alternative, a life of doubts and lies, was unthinkable. We'll need to be careful, plan every detail. He's clever, but so are we, I said, the resolve hardening in my voice. Mrs. Thompson nodded, her expression grave. We'll outwit him yet. It's time the truth came out. The alliance formed in Mrs. Thompson's living room that night was more than a plan of confrontation, it was a pact between two women, united in their pursuit of truth. In the days that followed, we would rehearse our approach, anticipate Mark's potential responses, and bolster each other's resolve. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but one thing was clear, we would face it together, come what may. The bond forged in the crucible of betrayal and shared determination was our armor, and with it, we stepped into the unknown, ready to face the truth, whatever it might reveal. The day dawned with a sky heavy with clouds, as if nature itself sensed the turmoil that awaited. My steps felt leaden as I walked to Mrs. Thompson's house, each one a march towards an uncertain confrontation. The plan was simple yet fraught with complexity: invite Mark under the pretense of a harmless visit, then confront him with his betrayal. My heart raced, a tumult of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Mrs. Thompson greeted me with a nod, her usual warmth tempered by the gravity of our undertaking. He'll be here soon, she said, her voice steady, but I caught the undercurrent of tension. The living room, usually a place of comfort, felt like a stage set for a drama neither of us wished to play. We didn't have to wait long. Mark's knock on the door came, each rap a thunderclap in the silence that had enveloped the room. Mrs. Thompson answered, her greeting to Mark light, belying the storm that was about to break. Thank you for coming, Mark. I just thought it would be nice to catch up over some tea. Mark entered, his usual confident demeanor on display. Of course, Mrs. Thompson. It's my pleasure, he replied, his smile not quite reaching his eyes as he spotted me. And what a pleasant surprise to see you here, dear. The casual endearment stung, a bitter reminder of the duplicity that had led us here. I forced a smile, my heart pounding. Yes, quite the surprise, I managed, my voice betraying none of the turmoil within. As we settled around the tea table, the small talk felt surreal, a thin veneer over the tension that crackled like static in the air. Mrs. Thompson poured the tea with a steady hand, her glance towards me a silent signal that the moment of truth was upon us. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling slightly as I reached for the remote control we had placed discreetly on the end table. The television flickered to life, the image of Mark and the other woman at the cafe filling the screen. His face paled, his eyes darting from the screen to me, then to Mrs. Thompson. What is this?" he stammered, the mask of composure slipping. "This is you, isn't it, Mark?" With another woman, laughing, touching, betraying, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "How long has this been going on?" Mark's eyes flickered with panic, his gaze settling on me as if seeing me for the first time. "I can explain," he began, the words tumbling out in a rush. "It's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like?" I echoed, incredulity sharpening my tone. It looks like betrayal. It looks like lies. Mrs. Thompson interjected, her voice firm. Mark, we deserve the truth. All of it. How could you do this to her? He faltered, the certainty with which he had entered the room now eroded by the weight of his secrets laid bare. I was lost, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It started as something simple, a distraction, but it grew into something I couldn't control. The words hung in the air, a confession that offered no comfort, only the confirmation of the depth of his deceit. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the shattered pieces of trust and the realization that the man I had loved was a stranger. Why? The question was a whisper, laden with the pain of betrayal and the ache of unspoken dreams shattered. Mark looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I don't know, he murmured, the inadequacy of his answer a final blow. The confrontation had laid bare the truth, but it offered no solace. The man I had shared my life with, had trusted with my heart, had been leading a double life, the depth of his betrayal now undeniable. The path ahead was unclear, the future once imagined together now irrevocably altered. In the aftermath of the revelation, one thing was certain, the journey to healing would be mine to make, a journey towards rediscovering trust, strength, and ultimately, myself. The room was suffused with a silence so thick it felt almost tangible, broken only by the soft hum of the television still displaying the evidence of Mark's infidelity. The air was heavy with the aftermath of his confession, each word a nail in the coffin of the life I thought we had built together. Mark's admission hung between us, a chasm that seemed insurmountable. I was lost, he had said, but the words offered little in the way of explanation or solace. They were a testament to his betrayal, a betrayal that had unraveled in the quiet of Mrs. Thompson's living room, under the guise of a simple tea. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, Mark continued, his voice a mix of remorse and desperation. It started out innocently enough, a conversation, a laugh. But it spiraled from there. And you didn't think to stop? To think of me, of us? I asked, the pain sharpening my words. Mark's eyes met mine, and in them, I saw a mixture of regret and something else, fear. I did, every single day. But by then, it felt like I was in too deep. I thought I could keep it separate from our life, that it wouldn't affect us. How could you be so selfish? The question was rhetorical, born out of a hurt so deep it seemed to echo around the room. Mrs. Thompson, who had been a silent witness to our exchange, spoke up. Mark, do you have any idea of the damage you've caused? Not just to your wife, but to your entire family? He nodded, a gesture that seemed both resigned and futile. I know, and I'm sorry. I truly am. I've ruined everything for a fantasy, for something that wasn't real. And now, I've lost the most important thing in my life. The admission was stark, a raw acknowledgement of the havoc he had wrought. Yet, it did little to ease the sense of betrayal that clung to me like a second skin. The man I had married, had trusted with my heart, had been living a lie, leaving me to question not only our past, but my ability to trust again. What happens now, Mark? Where do we go from here? The question was mine, but the weight of it seemed to press down on all of us. Mark looked from me to Mrs. Thompson and back again, the magnitude of his decisions crashing down upon him. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I'll go to therapy, we can go to couples counseling. I'll end it with her, completely. I don't want to lose you. The offer was a testament to his desperation, but the damage was done. The foundation of our marriage had been built on trust, and that foundation had been irrevocably shattered. I need time, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Time to think, to understand how we got here, and whether there's anything left to save. Mark nodded, the defeat evident in his posture. I understand. I'll give you all the time you need. I'm so sorry for everything. As he left Mrs. Thompson's house, the door closing softly behind him felt like the closing of a chapter, the end of the life I had known. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with pain and the daunting task of rebuilding. Yet, in the wreckage of my marriage, I knew that the journey ahead was mine to make, a journey toward healing, toward rediscovery, and perhaps, toward forgiveness. The truth had been unveiled, laying bare the fractures in a marriage I had believed unbreakable. But in its wake, I found a strength I hadn't known I possessed, a resolve to face the future, whatever it might hold. The days following the confrontation felt like navigating through a thick fog, each step uncertain and heavy with the residue of betrayal. My home, once a sanctuary filled with shared dreams and laughter, now echoed with the silence of Mark's absence. The spaces he once occupied loomed large, a constant reminder of the chasm between what was and what could have been. Mrs. Thompson's presence became my solace, her wisdom and empathy a beacon through my darkest moments. She had witnessed the unraveling of my marriage, yet she stood by me, unwavering in her support. One afternoon, as we sat amidst the remnants of tea, the conversation turned to healing. "How do you rebuild from something like this?" I asked, the question directed more at the universe than at Mrs. Thompson. With time, she began, her voice carrying the weight of her own experiences with loss. And with a lot of self-reflection. "You've been given a chance to rediscover who you are, outside of your marriage. It's a painful process, but it can also be a profound one. I just feel so lost," I confessed, the admission feeling like a small surrender. "Like I don't even know where to begin." Mrs. Thompson reached across the table, her hand enveloping mine in a gesture of comfort. "You begin with the smallest of steps. You embrace the pain, the anger, and the betrayal, and you allow yourself to feel them fully. It's the only way through." But what if it's too much? The fear of being consumed by my emotions was a constant shadow, trailing my every step. "It will feel like that at times," she acknowledged. "But you're stronger than you realize. And you're not alone. I'm here, and there are others who will be, too. You just have to be willing to let them in." The conversation shifted then, to more practical matters, legal considerations, financial arrangements, the logistics of untangling a shared life. Yet, even as we discussed these necessities, my mind wandered back to her words. The idea of rediscovering myself, of finding strength in the midst of such profound betrayal, was both daunting and strangely liberating. In the weeks that followed, I took Mrs. Thompson's advice to heart. I began journaling, pouring my thoughts and feelings onto the pages in an attempt to make sense of them. I sought therapy, a space where I could unpack the layers of my marriage and its dissolution with someone who offered guidance, but not judgment. Slowly, the fog began to lift. The moments of despair and loneliness were still there, but they were interspersed with moments of clarity and even hope. I began to envision a future that was mine alone, shaped by my desires and dreams, unencumbered by the shadow of betrayal. One evening, as I sat with Mrs. Thompson, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I found the courage to voice a newfound realization. "I think I'm going to be okay," I said, the words feeling like a tentative step towards reclaiming my life. Mrs. Thompson smiled, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sky. "I know you will be. You're already on your way." The aftermath of Mark's betrayal was a journey marked by pain, but it was also a journey of self-discovery. With each day, I moved closer to understanding not just the depth of my own resilience, but the importance of allowing myself to feel, to heal, and ultimately, to grow. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time since the revelation, it felt like a path I was ready to walk, armed with the lessons of the past and the hope for a future defined by my own terms. As the seasons changed, so did the landscape of my heart. The raw wounds of betrayal began to heal, leaving scars that spoke of survival and strength rather than of defeat. Mrs. Thompson's house, once a place of revelation and confrontation, had become a haven of healing and growth. Our meetings, initially filled with plans of confrontation and discussions of pain, had gradually shifted towards conversations about hope and the future. One crisp morning, as the first signs of spring breathed life into the world around us, I found myself sitting across from Mrs. Thompson, a sense of resolve stirring within me. The sunlight filtered through the window, casting a warm glow on the table where our cups of tea sat, untouched in the moment of revelation. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," I began, breaking the comfortable silence between us. "About rediscovering who I am and embracing this chance to start anew." Mrs. Thompson smiled, her eyes reflecting the light. "And what have you discovered?" she asked, her voice gentle, encouraging. "I've realized that I've been given a rare opportunity," I said, the words flowing with more confidence than I felt. "An opportunity to redefine my life on my own terms, to pursue the dreams I had set aside for the sake of my marriage." She nodded, her smile broadening. "That sounds like a beautiful realization. Do you have any idea where you'll start?" A laugh escaped me, a sound of lightness that felt foreign yet welcome. "I'm going to travel," I declared, the decision feeling right in a way few things had since the betrayal. "I've always wanted to see the world, to experience cultures different from my own. It's something I put off for too long." "Traveling is a wonderful way to open your heart and mind," Mrs. Thompson agreed. "It sounds like the perfect first step on this new journey of yours." The conversation drifted then to destinations and dreams, to the practicalities of solo travel and the excitement of unknown adventures. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of genuine excitement, a flicker of anticipation for what lay ahead. As the afternoon waned, I stood to leave, pausing at the door to look back at the woman who had become so much more than a neighbor. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "For everything." Mrs. Thompson rose, crossing the room to embrace me. "My dear, you have so much life ahead of you." "This is just the beginning," she whispered, her voice firm with conviction. Stepping out into the sunlight, I felt the weight of the past few months begin to lift. The path ahead was mine to choose, a path not defined by betrayal or pain, but by the possibilities of a future crafted by my own desires. In the days that followed, I threw myself into preparations, researching destinations, booking tickets, and planning itineraries. The process was exhilarating, each step a declaration of my newfound independence. The night before my departure, as I sat amidst the chaos of packed bags and travel guides, my phone buzzed with a message from Mrs. Thompson. "Remember, this journey is not just about the places you'll see, but about the person you'll become along the way. Safe travels, my dear." Tears blurred my vision as I read her message, a mix of gratitude and determination swelling within me. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with unknowns and challenges, but it was a journey I was ready to embrace. With the dawn, I would set out on a new adventure, one that promised not just the discovery of the world but the rediscovery of myself. The betrayal that had once threatened to define me was now just a chapter in my story, a painful but pivotal turning point that had led me to this moment of departure. As I looked out at the starlit sky, I realized that this wasn't just an end, but a beginning. A beginning of a journey that was entirely my own, a journey of healing, discovery, and, ultimately, of coming home to myself. The road ahead was mine to explore, and I stepped into it with a heart open to the vastness of the world and the depths of my own strength. Evergreen, with its idyllic streets and close-knit community, had always felt like a cocoon, shielding its inhabitants from the storms of the outside world. Daniel and I, with our seemingly perfect life, were often regarded as the embodiment of this serene existence. Our home, a charming Victorian at the heart of town, was the physical manifestation of our love, or so I believed. That fateful Thursday, the rain whispered secrets against the window panes, secrets that seemed intent on revealing themselves. Daniel had left early for work, his mornings increasingly consumed by urgent meetings that left little room for goodbye kisses or shared breakfasts. The loneliness of the house felt more pronounced in his absence, a silent testament to the growing distance between us. In search of a distraction, I ventured into Daniel's study, a space that was uniquely his, filled with the musky scent of old books and the faint hint of his cologne. It was here, amidst the clutter of his desk, that I found the envelope, an unassuming thing that contained the unraveling of our life together. The divorce papers, stark and unyielding, named Cassandra as the reason for the dissolution of our marriage. Her name, once a mere whisper in the corridors of our home, now screamed betrayal from the pages. The realization hit me like a physical blow, leaving me gasping for air in the suffocating silence of the room. I confronted Daniel that evening, the papers clutched in my trembling hands as I waited for him in the living room. The sound of his key turning in the lock was a prelude to the storm that was about to break. "Daniel," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "What is this?" I thrust the papers towards him, watching as his face transformed from surprise to resignation. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I had come to know well. "I was going to tell you," he said, avoiding my gaze. "Cassandra and it just happened. I didn't plan for it." "How long?" The question was a whisper, laden with the weight of our shared history, of promises made and now broken. "Months," he admitted, finally meeting my eyes. "I'm sorry, I truly am. But this, it hasn't been right for a long time." The words were a death knell, signaling the end of everything we had built. In that moment, I saw the truth of our marriage, of the distance that had crept in unnoticed, eroding the foundation we had once thought unbreakable. "I don't even know who you are anymore," I said, the realization dawning on me as I spoke. The man before me was a stranger, his heart and future entwined with another's. Daniel reached out, a futile gesture aimed at bridging the chasm that had opened between us. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said, his voice tinged with regret. But the damage was done, and no words could mend the fractures of trust and love that had shattered under the weight of his betrayal. That night, under the cover of darkness, I left the home that was no longer mine, driven by a desperate need to escape the ruins of my life. The rain had stopped, leaving in its wake a silence that echoed the emptiness inside me. Evergreen, with all its charm and warmth, now felt like a prison, its familiarity a painful reminder of what I had lost. As I drove away, the lights of Evergreen fading in the rearview mirror, I realized I wasn't just fleeing from Daniel and his betrayal. I was searching for a place where the whispers of the wind spoke not of secrets and lies, but of hope and new beginnings. The journey ahead was uncertain, a path shrouded in the unknown, but it was a path I was determined to take, toward healing, toward rediscovery, and, ultimately, toward a life that was truly my own. The night wrapped around me like a cloak as I drove, the darkness punctuated only by the occasional passing car and the soft glow of my dashboard. The road ahead was a blur, my destination unknown, driven by an instinctual need to put as much distance as possible between myself and the life I was leaving behind. I wasn't sure how long I had been driving when the first light of dawn began to breach the horizon, casting the world in a soft, ethereal glow. The beauty of the sunrise was a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me, a reminder of the world's indifference to my pain. Exhaustion began to set in, both physical and emotional, as the adrenaline that had fueled my escape faded. I realized I needed to stop, to find somewhere to rest, somewhere to let the reality of my situation sink in. That's when I saw it, a small sign for the Whitetail Inn, partially hidden by overgrown foliage, pointing down a narrow, winding road. It seemed as good a place as any to pause my flight. The gravel crunched under my tires as I made my way down the tree-lined drive, the inn emerging from the morning mist like a scene from a fairy tale. It was a quaint, two-story building, its wooden facade weathered by time and the elements, but welcoming all the same. I parked the car and stepped out, stretching my cramped muscles and taking a deep breath of the crisp morning air. The silence was profound, broken only by the sound of birdsong and the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. The front door of the inn opened as I approached, revealing a woman in her late 60s, with kind eyes and a warm smile that reached all the way to her eyes. "Good morning," she greeted. "You must be exhausted. Come in, dear." I followed her into the cozy lobby of the inn, the warmth from the fireplace a comforting embrace. "I'm Martha," she introduced herself as she led me to a seat by the fire. "And you are?" "Anna," I replied, the name sounding foreign on my lips. It had been a long time since anyone had asked me who I was, rather than who I was with. Martha studied me for a moment, her gaze compassionate. "You look like you're running from something, dear," she said, not as a question, but as a statement of understanding. I sighed, the weight of my situation suddenly pressing down on me. My husband, I began, but the words trailed off, the pain too fresh to articulate. Martha nodded, as if my unfinished sentence was enough. You don't have to explain, dear. The Whitetail Inn has always been a refuge for those in need of one. You can stay here as long as you need. I was taken aback by her kindness, by the unconditional support offered by a stranger. Thank you, I managed, my voice thick with unshed tears. Let me show you to your room, Martha said, standing and leading the way upstairs. You'll feel better after some rest. The room was simple but comfortable, with a view of the woods that surrounded the inn. Breakfast is at 8, Martha said, pausing at the door. But don't worry if you're not up. I'll save you some. As she left, closing the door softly behind her, I felt the first sense of peace since discovering Daniel's betrayal. The Whitetail Inn, with its creaking floors and the gentle kindness of its owner, felt like a sanctuary, a place where the whispers of the wind might just carry away the pain of the past. That morning, as I lay in the soft bed, watching the sunlight filter through the curtains, I allowed myself to cry, to mourn not just the loss of my marriage, but the loss of the life I had known. And as I cried, I began, slowly, to let go, to prepare myself for the journey ahead, a journey into the unknown, guided by the promise of new beginnings and the kindness of strangers. The Whitetail Inn, I realized, was not just a stop on my escape from Evergreen, it was the first step on my path to healing, a path that I would walk, one day at a time, towards a future that was mine to shape. The morning after my arrival at the Whitetail Inn brought a renewed sense of determination. Despite the turmoil that led me here, the tranquil setting and Martha's kindness provided a glimmer of hope. After a hearty breakfast, where Martha and I exchanged pleasantries and small talk about the inn's history, I decided to explore the surrounding woods. The wilderness called to me, offering a solace I hadn't realized I was seeking. The forest behind the inn was a dense tapestry of greens and browns, the canopy overhead a protective barrier from the world outside. I wandered aimlessly at first, allowing the natural beauty to envelop me. The soft rustle of leaves and distant bird calls a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. It was during one of these aimless wanderings that I stumbled upon Adam. He was seated on a fallen log, sketchbook in hand, completely absorbed in his work. I paused, not wanting to intrude, but the snap of a twig underfoot betrayed my presence. He looked up, his expression one of mild surprise that quickly morphed into a welcoming smile. Hello, he said, closing his sketchbook. I didn't expect to find anyone else out here. Embarrassed by my unintentional eavesdropping, I offered a small smile in return. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. I'm Anna, I introduced myself, feeling a strange connection to this stranger. Adam, he replied, standing and extending a hand, which I shook tentatively. Are you staying at the inn? I nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of my story, unsure of how much to share. Yes, just arrived last night. It's a long story. Adam's eyes held a depth of understanding that surprised me. We've all got our stories, he said, gesturing to the log beside him. Care to share yours? And so, I found myself pouring out my tale to this stranger in the woods, the words spilling out in a torrent of emotion I hadn't realized I'd been holding back. Adam listened intently, his expression one of empathy. When I finished, he offered a soft, I'm sorry you're going through this. But sometimes, I think the universe sends us exactly where we need to be, even if it doesn't seem like it at the time. His words struck a chord within me, the simplicity of his perspective offering a new way to view my circumstances. Maybe you're right, I conceded, allowing myself a moment of hope. Maybe this is where I need to be. We spent the rest of the afternoon walking through the woods, sharing bits and pieces of our lives. Adam revealed he was a painter, seeking inspiration in the solitude of nature, a world away from the demands of the city, and a career that had left him feeling empty. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees, Adam stopped and turned to me. You know, Anna, I believe everyone we meet on our path is there for a reason. Maybe I needed to meet you just as much as you needed to find this place. His words, simple yet profound, resonated with me, igniting a spark of connection I hadn't expected to find. In the quiet of the woods, with a man I had just met, I found a sense of understanding and acceptance that eluded me in the life I had left behind. As we made our way back to the inn, the last rays of sunlight filtering through the trees, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The woods, with their timeless beauty and serene quiet, had offered me a refuge, a place to heal and reflect. And in Adam, I had found an unexpected ally, someone who understood the power of nature to soothe and heal. That evening, as I lay in my room at the Whitetail Inn, the events of the day replaying in my mind, I realized that my journey to healing had truly begun. The woods had whispered their secrets of resilience and new beginnings, and I was ready to listen. Over the next few days, the Whitetail Inn and the surrounding woods became more than just a temporary refuge, they started to feel like home. Each morning, I would join Martha for breakfast, enjoying her company and the stories she shared about the inn and its visitors over the years. And each day, I found myself looking forward to spending time with Adam, exploring the woods and discovering the peace that seemed to permeate every leaf and branch. One particularly beautiful evening, as the sun painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Adam and I found ourselves at the edge of a clearing, the last rays of light casting long shadows on the ground. We sat in comfortable silence, watching as the day gave way to night. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Adam broke the silence, his voice soft, reflective. "Nature has a way of putting everything into perspective." I nodded, my eyes still fixed on the horizon. I never realized how much I needed this peace. It's like I'm hearing myself think clearly for the first time in years. Adam turned to me, a gentle smile on his lips. Sometimes, we get so caught up in the noise of our lives that we forget the music of our own souls. It takes a place like this to remember. His words resonated with me, stirring something deep within. I used to think home was a place, I mused aloud. Now, I'm not so sure. It feels more like a feeling. Like being at peace with yourself and the world around you. "That's a beautiful way to put it," Adam replied. "Home isn't just where you live, it's where you're understood." As we made our way back to the inn, our conversation drifted to our dreams and aspirations, the things we held dear, and the paths we wanted to take moving forward. It was during this walk that I realized how much I had changed since arriving at the Whitetail Inn. The betrayal and pain that had driven me here were still part of my story, but they no longer defined me. The following morning, I awoke to find a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. After breakfast, I sought out Martha, finding her in the garden, tending to her flowers. "Martha," I began, unsure of how to express the gratitude I felt. "I want to thank you for everything. This place, it's been a sanctuary for me." Martha straightened up, wiping her hands on her apron as she turned to face me. "My dear, seeing you begin to heal is thanks enough. This inn has always been a place of refuge, and I'm glad it could be that for you." I hesitated, the decision I had been pondering now at the forefront of my mind. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about the inn needing someone to carry on its legacy. I believe I want that person to be me." Martha's eyes lit up, a mixture of surprise and joy evident in her expression. "Are you sure, Anna? It's a big responsibility, running an inn." I nodded, more sure of this than I had been of anything in a long time. "I am. This place, it's helped me find a part of myself I thought was lost. I want to give others the same opportunity to heal and find peace." Martha embraced me, her hug warm and encouraging. "Then I can't think of anyone better suited for the task. We'll have a lot to discuss and plan, but I have no doubt you'll make the Whitetail Inn thrive." As we parted, a sense of purpose filled me, a realization that my journey here was just beginning. The Whitetail Inn, with its creaking floors and warm fires, was not just a place of refuge, it was a place where new beginnings were born, where the whispers of the wind carried promises of hope and healing. And in that moment, I knew I had found my new rhythm, a harmony with the world around me that I had never experienced before. The future was uncertain, but it was a future I looked forward to with anticipation and hope, ready to embrace whatever came my way. As the days melted into each other, the Whitetail Inn and its surrounding wilderness became a sanctuary for my battered heart. Each morning, I awoke to the gentle symphony of nature, a reminder that life, despite its trials, continued with relentless beauty. My conversations with Adam deepened, his presence a comforting constant in the landscape of my healing. One such morning, after a night of restless thoughts, I found a note from Martha slipped under my door. The elegance of her handwriting hinted at the importance of its content, urging me to join her for breakfast. Curiosity piqued, I dressed quickly and made my way downstairs. Martha was already at the table, a spread of homemade scones, fresh fruit, and steaming coffee laid out before her. The morning light filtered through the windows, casting a warm glow on the wooden surfaces of the inn's cozy dining room. "Good morning, Anna," Martha greeted, her eyes twinkling with an unspoken excitement. "Please, have a seat." I joined her, the aroma of the coffee a welcome embrace. "Good morning, Martha." "This looks wonderful," I said, gesturing to the breakfast before us. Martha poured us each a cup of coffee before sitting back, her gaze thoughtful. "Anna, I've been meaning to talk to you about something," she began, her tone serious yet tinged with warmth. I nodded, a flicker of apprehension stirring within me. "Of course, Martha. What's on your mind?" She took a deep breath, her hands clasping together on the table. "I've watched you these past few weeks, seen the changes in you. This place, the inn, it has a way of healing people, of giving them space to find themselves again." I listened, touched by her observation, unsure where this was leading. Martha continued, "I'm getting older, Anna. Running this inn has been my life's joy, but it's time for me to retire, to pass the baton to someone who can breathe new life into its walls." I felt a pang of sadness at the thought of Martha leaving the inn without her kind presence unimaginable. She reached across the table, placing a hand over mine. "I want you to consider taking over the Whitetail Inn, Anna. I believe you're the one to carry its legacy forward." The offer left me speechless, a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts colliding within me. "Martha, that's..." I don't know what to say. "I'm honored, but I'm not sure I'm the person for this." "Why not?" Martha pressed gently. "You have a way about you, a warmth and understanding that people gravitate towards. You've seen firsthand how this place can heal. Imagine being able to offer that to others." I pondered her words, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. The inn had become a refuge, a place of healing for my own wounded heart. Could I really step into Martha's shoes, offer that same sanctuary to others? "Think about it, Anna," Martha said, standing to clear the table. "You don't have to decide right now. But know that I wouldn't offer this if I didn't believe in you." The rest of the day passed in a blur, Martha's offer echoing in my mind. I found myself wandering the trails behind the inn, lost in thought. It was there that Adam found me, sitting by the stream, the murmur of the water a soothing backdrop to my tumultuous thoughts. "You look miles away," Adam remarked, taking a seat beside me. I smiled wryly. "Just pondering my future." He nodded, understanding. "Martha's offer?" I was surprised. "You know about it?" Adam chuckled. "Martha doesn't keep many secrets from me." "So, what are you going to do?" I sighed, the enormity of the decision weighing heavily on me. "I don't know, Adam. It's a big responsibility, a new path. But it's also a chance to give back, to make a difference in people's lives the way Martha has." Adam looked at me, his eyes earnest. "Sometimes, the most unexpected paths lead us to where we're meant to be. You have a gift, Anna. This could be your way of sharing it with the world." His words, full of faith and encouragement, offered a new perspective. Perhaps this was my calling, my chance to forge a new identity, to turn my pain into purpose. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the stream, I realized that my journey of healing at the Whitetail Inn was leading me to a new beginning, not just for myself, but for those who would find refuge here in the future. The decision wasn't just about taking over an inn, it was about embracing my destiny, about stepping into a role that had been waiting for me all along. "Thank you, Adam," I said, a sense of resolve settling over me. "I think I know what I need to do." And in that moment, by the stream with the setting sun as our witness, I made my choice. I would take Martha's offer, step into the unknown, and breathe new life into the Whitetail Inn, continuing its legacy of healing and hope. It was a daunting path, but one I knew I was meant to walk, guided by the whispers of the wind and the strength of my own healing heart. The days following my decision to accept Martha's offer were a whirlwind of activity and emotions. The reality of taking over the Whitetail Inn felt both exhilarating and daunting. Yet, beneath the flurry of preparations, there was a profound sense of rightness, a confirmation that I was exactly where I needed to be. One evening, as the twilight cast a soft glow over the inn, Martha and I sat down in the living room, surrounded by old photographs and mementos of the inn's storied past. The room was bathed in the warm light of the fireplace, creating an ambience of warmth and nostalgia. "Anna," Martha began, her voice tinged with emotion, "I want to show you something." She handed me an old, leather-bound guest book, its pages filled with names and messages from travelers who had found refuge within these walls. As I flipped through the pages, I was struck by the profound impact the inn had had on so many lives. "This is incredible, Martha. Each of these entries is a testament to the sanctuary you've created here." Martha smiled, her eyes misting over. "The inn has always been more than just a place to stay. It's a haven for those in need of peace and healing. And I know you'll continue that legacy." Our conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. I rose to answer it, finding Adam on the doorstep, a canvas under his arm. "I thought this might belong here," he said, unveiling a painting of the Whitetail Inn, captured in the golden light of dawn. The painting took my breath away, the inn rendered with such care and detail that it seemed to pulse with life. "Adam, it's beautiful." "Thank you," I managed, overwhelmed by the gesture. "It's my way of contributing to the inn's new chapter," Adam replied, his gaze meeting mine. "And speaking of new chapters," he hesitated, a look of determination settling over his features. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about making a difference and embracing new paths." I waited, sensing the importance of what he was about to say. "I've decided to stay in Evergreen," Adam continued. "To open a studio and gallery, to share my art with the world and maybe help others find their way through creativity." His decision filled me with joy, the prospect of sharing this journey with Adam adding a layer of completeness to my own new beginning. "I think that's a wonderful idea. This town, the inn, it'll be richer for having your art as part of it." As we stood there, in the doorway of the Whitetail Inn, a sense of possibility enveloped us. The challenges ahead seemed less daunting, knowing we would face them together, each in our own way, contributing to the tapestry of healing and hope that the inn represented. Later that night, as I lay in bed, the soft whispers of the wind through the open window spoke of change and growth. The inn, with its creaking floors and gentle shadows, felt alive with potential. In taking on this responsibility, I wasn't just giving myself a new purpose, I was honoring the legacy of those who had come before me, weaving my own story into the fabric of this place. I realized then that my journey hadn't been about escaping the pain of my past, but about moving towards a future where that pain could be transformed into something meaningful. The Whitetail Inn was more than a building, it was a beacon of light for those lost in the darkness, a place where weary souls could find rest and, perhaps, a new direction. As sleep finally claimed me, I felt a deep sense of peace. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but also with joy, growth, and the satisfaction of making a difference. The whispers of the wind, once a harbinger of change, now spoke of home, of belonging, and of a future bright with promise. And so, my story, which began with a heartbreak and a flight into the unknown, found its resolution in the embrace of the Whitetail Inn. Here, amid the towering trees and the winding paths of the countryside, I had discovered not just a new beginning, but a place where my heart, once fractured by betrayal, had found a way to heal and flourish. The inn, with its legacy of healing, was now mine to steward, a task I accepted with gratitude and determination, ready to face whatever the future held, guided by the whispers of the wind. The day Alex asked to meet at our usual cafe felt like any other. The sky hinted at rain, a gentle reminder of the ever-changing seasons in our small town. I arrived early, a habit born from a desire to gather my thoughts before facing him. The cafe, with its familiar warmth and the comforting smell of coffee, offered a semblance of peace. Alex arrived shortly after, his presence disrupting the calm. "Leah, thanks for coming on such short notice," he began, his voice betraying a hint of unease. I nodded, folding my hands on the table, bracing myself. "What's this about, Alex? Is Mia okay?" The concern for our daughter was immediate, overshadowing the remnants of bitterness between us. He quickly assured me, "Mia's fine, it's not that. I was wondering if she could stay with me for a while." The request caught me off guard, stirring a whirlpool of emotions. "Stay with you? For how long exactly?" I probed, trying to hide my surprise. "A few months," he clarified, avoiding direct eye contact. "I think it would be good for her, and for me." I studied him for a moment, searching for the underlying reason. Our shared custody had always been amicable, but this was a significant change. "Why now, Alex? What's changed?" I asked, needing to understand his sudden desire to alter the balance we had carefully maintained. He sighed, a deep, weary sound. "I've missed so much of her life, Leah. These weekend visits aren't enough. I want to be more involved, to really be a father to her." His words, sincere and filled with regret, softened the protective wall I had built around my heart. Mia adored her father, and despite our differences, I knew Alex loved her deeply. "Let me think about it," I finally said, the decision weighing heavily on me. "I'll talk to Mia, see how she feels about this." Alex nodded, a look of gratitude passing over his features. "Thank you, Leah. That's all I ask." As I left the cafe, the sky opened up, releasing a gentle shower that seemed to cleanse away some of the tension from our meeting. The drive home was a blur of thoughts, my mind grappling with the possibility of change. Mia's happiness was my priority, and if spending more time with Alex was what she needed, then I would find a way to make it work. That evening, as I sat down with Mia to discuss the proposal, her reaction was as enthusiastic as Alex had hoped. "Really, Mom? I can stay with Daddy for a while? That would be awesome." Her excitement was infectious, but I needed her to understand the implications. "It would mean a big change, sweetheart. You'd be living there for a few months." "Are you sure?" Mia's nod was emphatic, her smile wide. "I love it here with you, Mom. But I miss Daddy too. I want to spend more time with him." Her words settled it. The decision was made, not out of defeat, but from a place of love and understanding. I would let Mia stay with Alex, trusting that this twist of fate would bring about a positive change in our lives. Little did I know, this decision would unravel a mystery that had been lying dormant, setting us on a path that would alter our lives forever. Mia's transition to living with Alex for a few months was smoother than I had anticipated. Their days were filled with activities, and every evening, Mia would share stories of her adventures with Alex. It was during one of our nightly phone calls that Mia's discovery came to light. "Mom, guess what I found in the attic today?" Mia's voice was bubbling with excitement through the phone. "What did you find, sweetie?" I asked, smiling at her enthusiasm. "A big, old photo album with pictures of Dad when he was young. And there's this lady with him in almost all the photos. She's really pretty. Dad looked so happy." Mia's tone shifted to curiosity. I felt a pang of curiosity mixed with an unexpected twinge of jealousy. "Did your dad say who she was?" I probed gently, not wanting to make Mia feel uncomfortable. Mia's response was quick. "Yeah, I asked him. But he just got all quiet and said it was someone from a long time ago. He didn't want to talk about it." Her words piqued my interest. Alex had never mentioned anyone from his past during our marriage. "Mia, can you bring the album next time you come over? I'd love to see it." "Sure, Mom. There are so many pictures. It's like a treasure," Mia exclaimed, her previous enthusiasm returning. The following weekend, Mia brought the album. As we sat together on the living room couch, flipping through its pages, I was transported to a time in Alex's life I knew nothing about. The woman in the photos was indeed beautiful, with a radiant smile that seemed to light up the room, even from a photograph. Mia said you didn't tell her much about this woman, I mentioned, trying to keep my tone neutral as I pointed to a picture of the two of them laughing together. Alex, who had come to pick Mia up, looked uncomfortable. Her name was Sarah. We were close, once upon a time, he admitted, taking a seat beside us, but keeping a careful distance from the album. Close? I pressed, curious despite myself. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I remembered well. We were involved before I met you. It ended badly. She disappeared. Disappeared? The word hung heavy in the air, loaded with unspoken implications. Alex nodded, his gaze distant. One day she was there, the next she wasn't. No one knew what happened to her. It was a long time ago, Leah. I'd rather not dig up the past. But the past, it seemed, had a way of making itself known. Seeing the photographs, hearing the pain in Alex's voice, reignited a spark of curiosity in me. Here was a part of Alex's life, a part of his heart, shrouded in mystery. Mia, honey, why don't you go pack up your things? I suggested, wanting a moment alone with Alex. Once Mia was out of earshot, I turned to Alex. This woman, Sarah, she meant a lot to you, didn't she? Alex met my gaze, his usual guarded demeanor faltering. Yes, she did. But Leah, why does this matter now? Because Mia found these photos, Alex. And because I think everyone deserves to know their story, even if it's a difficult one. Maybe it's time to find out what really happened to Sarah. Alex looked torn, a war of emotions playing across his face. Finally, he nodded. Maybe you're right. But where do we even start? I smiled, a plan already forming in my mind. Let's start at the beginning. Together, we'll find out what happened to Sarah. As we embarked on this unexpected journey, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to unravel a mystery that would change everything. Little did I know how right I would be. The decision to delve into Sarah's disappearance wasn't one we took lightly. The mystery that had remained unsolved for years was about to be reopened, and with it, a chapter of Alex's life he had long tried to forget. Yet, there was a palpable sense of determination between us, a shared resolve to unearth the truth. On a cloudy Saturday morning, Alex and I sat across from each other at my kitchen table, surrounded by old newspapers, journals, and a laptop open to a search engine. The task ahead seemed daunting, but the need for answers propelled us forward. Where do we even start? I asked, breaking the silence that had settled over us. Alex ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of uncertainty. I've been thinking about that. Maybe we should start with her friends, the people she was close to back then. If anyone knows something, it might be them. It was a logical first step. Do you have any of them in mind? I inquired, reaching for a notepad to jot down any leads. Yeah, there was Jenna, her best friend. And Mark, they worked together at the bookstore downtown. Alex's voice grew stronger as he named them, the memories coming back to him. I noted the names, aware of the delicate task of reaching out to them after so many years. Okay, I'll look them up, see if I can find contact information. As I typed the names into the search engine, Alex leaned over, pointing at the screen when Jenna's social media profile appeared. That's her, he confirmed, a hint of nostalgia in his voice. I sent Jenna a carefully worded message, explaining who we were and why we were reaching out. Then, we moved on to Mark, finding an email address associated with a local business. The waiting that followed was a test of patience. Every passing hour without a response tightened the knot of tension between us. It wasn't until late afternoon that my phone chimed with a notification. It was a message from Jenna. Alex? It's Jenna. I got your message. It's been so long. I never thought I'd hear about Sarah again, I read aloud, the words feeling surreal. Alex leaned in, his expression a mix of hope and apprehension. What does she say? Will she talk to us? She's agreed to meet us tomorrow morning at the cafe downtown, I replied, a wave of relief washing over me. The next morning, we found Jenna waiting for us at the cafe, her appearance barely changed from the photos we had seen. After initial pleasantries, we dove into the reason for our meeting. Jenna, we're trying to find out what happened to Sarah. Anything you remember could help, Alex said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. Jenna sighed, a shadow crossing her features. I've always wondered, after she disappeared, it was like she was just erased. People moved on, but I couldn't. Sarah was planning to leave town, did you know that? Alex shook his head, the information clearly new to him. Leave town? Why? She was scared, Jenna continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. She said someone was threatening her, making her life hell. But she wouldn't tell me who. A week later, she was gone. The revelation was a bombshell, casting a new light on Sarah's disappearance. The notion that she had been threatened changed everything, suggesting her decision to leave wasn't voluntary. Did she mention anything else? Any clue about who might have been threatening her? I pressed, aware of how vital any piece of information could be. Jenna shook her head, regret etched on her face. I wish I knew more. Sarah was private about her fears. But I always suspected. Suspected who? Alex interjected, leaning forward. Jenna hesitated, then sighed. Mark. They had a falling out not long before she vanished. He was obsessed with her. The mention of Mark, a name we had come across in our initial search, felt like a piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Our next step was clear. We needed to find Mark and uncover his connection to Sarah's disappearance. As we left the cafe, the sky had cleared, but the path ahead seemed clouded with more questions than answers. Yet, with each step, we were determined to piece together the mystery of Sarah's fate, unaware of the twists and turns that awaited us. The morning air was crisp, carrying the promise of revelations as Alex and I approached the bookstore where Mark now worked. The quaint shop, nestled between a cafe and a boutique, seemed an unlikely place for answers to a mystery that had lingered for years. Are you ready for this? I asked Alex, noting the tension in his posture as we stood outside the store. He nodded, a determined glint in his eye. Let's find out the truth. Inside, the bookstore was a labyrinth of shelves, each aisle a whisper of stories untold. We found Mark behind the counter, his appearance much changed from the photographs we had seen. Time had etched lines into his face, and his eyes held a wariness that piqued my curiosity. Mark? I'm Alex, and this is Leah. We need to talk to you about Sarah, Alex said, his voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of apprehension. Mark's reaction was immediate, his eyes widening in recognition before darting away, a clear sign of discomfort. Sarah? That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. What about her? We're trying to find out what happened to her. Jenna mentioned you two had a falling out before she disappeared, I interjected, watching his reaction closely. Mark sighed, a deep, resigned sound, and motioned for us to follow him to a more private corner of the store. Yes, we had a disagreement. It was a difficult time. But I had nothing to do with her disappearance. Jenna suggested you were obsessed with Sarah. That you might have been threatening her, Alex pressed, the accusation hanging heavily in the air. Mark's face flushed with anger, or perhaps guilt, it was hard to tell. Obsessed? That's ridiculous. I cared about Sarah, yes, but I would never harm her. You have to believe me. His denial was vehement, but something in his tone suggested there was more to the story. If you cared about her, then help us. Tell us everything you know. Any detail could help us understand what happened to her, I said, hoping to appeal to his better nature. Mark looked between us, conflict evident in his gaze. Finally, he relented, his shoulders slumping in defeat. All right. Sarah was scared, that much was true. She said someone was sending her threatening messages, but she wouldn't tell me who. I tried to help, but she pushed me away. His words added another layer of complexity to the puzzle. Do you have any idea who might have been sending those messages? Alex asked, his voice softer now, recognizing the pain in Mark's admission. I don't. I always suspected someone from her past, someone she knew before she moved here. But she never confirmed it, Mark admitted, a note of sorrow in his voice. The conversation with Mark left us with more questions than answers. The identity of the person threatening Sarah remained a mystery, a shadow that loomed large over our quest for the truth. As we left the bookstore, the weight of our discovery hung between us. Sarah's fear, Mark's denial, and the unknown sender of the threatening messages formed a complex web we were determined to untangle. Where do we go from here? Alex asked, the frustration evident in his voice. I pondered for a moment, the pieces of the puzzle swirling in my mind. We need to dig deeper into Sarah's past, find out who she was before she met you. There has to be a clue somewhere. Our journey into the past was far from over. Each step revealed hidden facets of Sarah's life, drawing us closer to the truth. Yet, the path was fraught with uncertainties, the outcome unpredictable. But one thing was clear, we were committed to uncovering the truth, no matter where it led us. The mystery of Sarah's disappearance, once a dormant chapter in Alex's life, was now an unfolding story that promised to change everything. The lead from Mark about Sarah's fear and the unknown threats she faced propelled us deeper into the mystery of her disappearance. The next step was to delve into Sarah's past, to uncover the roots of the fear that drove her into hiding. Alex and I decided to visit Sarah's hometown, a small, picturesque place that seemed untouched by time. Our goal was to speak with anyone who might have known Sarah before she vanished. Upon arriving, we headed straight to the local library, hoping to find public records or old newspapers that could offer clues. The librarian, a kindly older woman named Mrs. Henderson, was more than willing to help when we explained our mission. Sarah, you say? The poor girl who disappeared all those years ago? What brings you looking for her now? Mrs. Henderson asked, peering at us over her glasses with a mix of curiosity and concern. Alex took the lead, his voice tinged with emotion. She was very important to me, Mrs. Henderson. We're trying to find out what happened to her. Mrs. Henderson nodded, understanding in her eyes. Follow me, then. We keep old newspapers in the archives. Maybe you'll find something there. The archives were a treasure trove of history, each newspaper a snapshot of the past. We spent hours poring over articles, until a small piece about a local drama club caught our eye. Sarah had been mentioned as a lead in their annual play, a detail that seemed innocuous until we read further. The article hinted at an offstage drama, a love triangle, that had the town whispering. This could be something, I murmured, tapping the article. Maybe one of the people involved in this love triangle was the one sending her threats. Alex nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. Let's find out who else was in the club. They might be able to tell us more. Our inquiry led us to a woman named Emily, a former drama club member who had been close to Sarah. We found her at a cozy cafe in the heart of town, where she agreed to meet us after some initial hesitation. Sarah was my friend, Emily began, stirring her coffee nervously. When she disappeared, it was a shock to all of us. But if I'm being honest, I wasn't entirely surprised. Why not? I asked gently, sensing we were about to uncover a significant piece of the puzzle. Emily sighed, a look of sadness crossing her face. Because of Daniel. He was obsessed with Sarah, wouldn't take no for an answer. When she started seeing someone else, he didn't take it well. Daniel? Alex echoed, confusion evident in his voice. Do you mean Mark? No, Daniel. Mark was just a friend. But Daniel, he was dangerous. After Sarah disappeared, he left town, and no one heard from him again. The revelation was a bombshell, shifting the focus of our investigation entirely. A new name, a new suspect, someone neither Alex nor I had considered. Do you know where Daniel might have gone? Or how we can find him? I asked, the urgency clear in my voice. Emily shook her head, her expression apologetic. I'm sorry, I don't. After he left, it was like he vanished into thin air. We left the cafe with heavy hearts, the weight of Emily's revelations hanging over us. Daniel, a name that had never come up in our search, was now the key to unraveling the mystery of Sarah's disappearance. As we drove back, the silence between Alex and I was filled with unspoken fears and questions. The past, it seemed, was darker and more complex than we had imagined. Leah, Alex finally said, breaking the silence, I had no idea about any of this. Daniel, the threats, it's all news to me. I know, Alex, I replied, placing a reassuring hand on his. We're in this together. We'll find the truth, for Sarah's sake. The journey into Sarah's past had taken an unexpected turn, unveiling secrets that had been buried for years. The mystery of her disappearance, once a distant tragedy, was now a tangible presence in our lives, guiding us towards a truth that promised to change everything. With the name Daniel now etched into our investigation, Alex and I found ourselves standing at the threshold of a revelation that could potentially solve the mystery that had haunted us for so long. The drive back from Sarah's hometown was filled with a palpable tension, our minds racing with the implications of Emily's disclosures. That name, Daniel, it never came up before, not in any of our talks about Sarah, Alex said, breaking the silence that had enveloped us since we left the cafe. I know, I replied, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. It's like he was a ghost, leaving no trace behind except for the memories of those who knew him and feared him. The following days were consumed with trying to trace Daniel's steps after he left town. Our efforts led us to a private investigator who specialized in cold cases. Explaining our situation, we hoped he could shed some light on Daniel's whereabouts after he vanished. Daniel, the investigator, a grizzled man named Hank, mused as he sifted through the information we provided. Disappearing without a trace isn't as easy as it sounds. There's always something left behind. Let's see what we can find. Hank's confidence was reassuring, offering a glimmer of hope in what felt like an endless tunnel. Days turned into weeks as he delved into the past, following the scant leads that had emerged from our conversation with Emily. Then, one afternoon, as autumn began to paint the world in shades of gold and crimson, Hank called us into his office. I found something, he announced without preamble, his expression serious. Alex and I exchanged anxious glances before focusing on Hank, our breaths held in anticipation. Daniel changed his name after he left town. Moved across the country and started anew. But, Hank paused, letting the weight of his next words sink in, he passed away 5 years ago. Car accident. The news was a shock, a final twist in the winding path we had followed. Daniel, the missing piece of the puzzle, could no longer answer the questions that had tormented us for so long. But that's not all, Hank continued, his tone indicating there was more to the story. Before he died, Daniel wrote a letter. To whom, it's unclear, but it was found among his possessions. It's confessional. He handed us a copy of the letter, the words blurring before my eyes as I tried to comprehend their meaning. Daniel confessed to his obsession with Sarah, to the threats he made in a misguided attempt to win her back. But most shockingly, he confessed to confronting Sarah the night she disappeared, to an argument that spiraled out of control, leading to unintended tragedy. I never meant to hurt her, the letter read, Daniel's remorse seeping through the words. In my madness, I thought I could make her love me. But I only brought her harm. I've lived with this guilt every day, haunted by the ghost of what I've done. The revelation was a gut punch, the final piece of the puzzle slotting into place with a bitter click. Sarah's fate, a mystery that had lingered in the shadows, was now painfully clear. We took the letter to the police, the evidence compelling enough to reopen the case. Though Daniel was no longer around to face the consequences of his actions, the truth brought a semblance of closure to those he had left behind. As Alex and I stood together, the letter's contents heavy on our hearts, we realized that our journey had come to an end. The mystery of Sarah's disappearance had been solved, the shadows of the past finally dispelled by the light of truth. Leah, Alex began, his voice choked with emotion. Shoo, I interrupted, placing a hand on his arm. You don't have to say anything. we found the truth. That's what matters. In the weeks that followed, a quiet understanding settled between us, the ordeal drawing us closer in a way neither of us had expected. Our shared grief for Sarah, and the guilt that Alex carried, had been alleviated by the truth, even if it couldn't erase the past. Life moved on, as it always does, but the journey we undertook together remained a testament to the enduring power of love, the unbreakable bonds of family, and the undeniable need for closure. In the end, it was a twist of fate that brought us to the truth, proving that sometimes, the most painful paths lead to the most necessary